The NFL Draft is a practice in answering the trends set the previous season. In the 1984 season, Dan Marino became the first quarterback to ever top 5,000 yards passing.
Here is Marino, quick drop, throws for the sideline. This way goes.
That began the high expectations for the quarterbacks, I think. He became the bar that everyone had to reach.
As a quarterback, you have to have confidence in yourself that you can do the job.
In the 1985 draft, there aren't that many quarterbacks out there who look like they would be able to do that. Classic quarterbacks in the drop back style.
Marino was a unique talent. And you could say, well, how many Dan Marinos are there out there? But the fact is, everybody went looking for them at that time.
Cleveland general manager Bernie Kosar was one of the quarterback starved. He was familiar with needing a marquee QB.
Without the great quarterback, you weren't going to contend for championships. And in '83, I had the first pick and picked Elway, and the owner traded Elway away. By the time I got to Cleveland, I inherited, the three quarterbacks that, in my opinion, there was no way we were going to win anything.
The biggest name in college football and the most celebrated, not just quarterback, but player in all of college football was Doug Flutie at Boston College.
Flutie flushed, throws it down, caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown. The Eagles win it.
And I remember Art Modell saying, was just going crazy over Flutie. I said, it's the other guy that fascinates me.
And your heart goes out to Bernie Kosar, who did everything he could.
The other guy, who was Bernie Kosar, who really was not a great athlete, but he had great instincts, great anticipation, a much better arm than he's given credit for, as smart as any quarterback I've ever been around. And I thought he gave us a chance.
Kosar, who hailed from Youngstown, Ohio, would also give the Browns a local favorite. But Cleveland was not the only team with eyes for Bernie. Virginia Tech's Bruce Smith was locked in as the top pick. So teams burned the phone lines to Houston, looking to trade for their #2 overall pick in hopes of landing a franchise quarterback.
Lad Herzog was the general manager of Houston at the time. They were in the same division as the Browns. There's no way they were going to trade that pick to the Browns.
All of a sudden, I had become aware of a rule that enabled a player to come out after just 2 football seasons in college if he graduated.
Draft-eligible players, I believe the draft was at the end of April, and they had to declare by mid-April that they were going to be eligible for the draft.
He could have graduated in May and taken enough hours to graduate in May, and then he would have been eligible for a regular draft. Or he could wait, take part of it, take the rest in the summer, and then as long as he graduated from the summer, then be eligible to play in the NFL.
I called Buffalo and I said, look, you have the first pick in next year's supplemental draft. I said, would you consider trading that pick?
So we made a trade for the rights to Bernie Kosar, which gave us, in essence, an extra draft.
And I got a call from Lad. He said to me, look, I just want to tell you that I just traded Kosar to the Minnesota Vikings. I said, well, you did not trade Kosar to the Minnesota Vikings. You traded the pick to the Minnesota Vikings because I just traded with Buffalo for the first supplemental pick. All hell broke loose.
Minnesota went ballistic because it wasn't going to get him. The Oilers went ballistic because it cost them 2 picks. And so Pete Rozelle, the commissioner, called them all on the carpet at 410 Park Avenue.
The Vikings tried to fight it and said that he can't circumvent the rules this way.
We all operated under the same premise that here was a player that had declared himself eligible for the April 30th draft, had hired an agent, had negotiated contracts with various clubs, and that this player had no college eligibility remaining.
But Mike Lynn, at that time, threatened to sue the Browns, threatened to sue the NFL.
Rozelle ultimately left it up to Bernie Kosar whether he filed the paperwork that was going to make him eligible for the 1985 draft or whether he waited to file that paperwork, which would put him in play for the supplemental draft.
I think you could characterize the mood around here as being disappointed of the decision of the commissioner and not necessarily optimistic about what may occur.
It's like fighting over custody of children. And ultimately, Rozelle did the smart thing. He said, "Kid, what do you want?"
But he also gave Minnesota the right to give them a week to recruit Bernie Kosar, just like they would if he was coming out of high school going to college.
The Vikings flew down there with Bud Grant. We had Marty Schottenheimer had only concluded 8 games as an interim coach. We really hadn't had any stature. Here comes Bud Grant, had been in 4 Super Bowls, with Mark Trestman, who was Kosar's, one of his closest friends and his college coach. I said, we don't have a chance. We're going to lose this recruiting war.
From the beginning, it's what we felt would happen. I had impressed on the Kosars that I felt it was in our best interest to wait. We did, and at this point, Bernie has a choice.
He wanted to play in Cleveland. Ultimately, he didn't want to go anywhere else.
Got everything clicking now? I'm going to finish out this semester, which is going to end in about 10 days, and then in all likelihood make myself available for the supplemental draft.
It was almost like LeBron coming to Cleveland. It was the same kind of reaction. All of northeastern Ohio was just as excited as they could be.
It's a question, I think, of me being from the area, my commitments towards the Youngstown, Cleveland area, and me basically just wanting to go home.
Bernie Kosar officially became a Brown in the supplemental draft.
Welcome you to the Cleveland Browns, and we're happy to have you.
Hey, Bernie, I know talent when I see it. I haven't spent much time talking to you about it because I can't do anything to help you. You're going to do it yourself.
Ernie, of course, went out and brought in Gary Danielson from the Detroit Lions to tutor Bernie. Ernie also knew that Gary never made a full season without being injured.
Gary Danielson got hurt in the 5th game. Bernie had to play. He had 2,000-yard backs, Kevin Mack and Ernest Miner, an ultra-conservative coach to protect him, Marty Schottenheimer, and they went 8-8 his rookie year, and they won the AFC Central.
I think if you look back on Kosar's career, it's remembered for the near miss.
Kosar could have taken the Browns to 2 Super Bowls.
Fighter inside the 5 to the 4 to the 3 to the 2. He fumbles the football and the Broncos have it. Oh my goodness. Doesn't seem fair.
And we would perhaps view Bernie Kosar very differently if he'd done so. But there are people in Cleveland still today who view Bernie Kosar as their quarterback.
Bernie Kosar played better than a lot of quarterbacks who did win Super Bowls.
As a man open, Weathers, 30, 25, 20, 15, touchdown! Bernie Kosar beat the blitz. That'll break the ice in a hurry.
At the end of his career, he finished up as a backup quarterback in Dallas and actually had a great moment in an NFC Championship game.
Championship again.
I think that game, the fact that the day that the Cowboys needed him in a big spot, that he was able to come back in and play as well as he played, tells you a lot about the kind of player and competitor that Bernie Kosar was.